Okay, and you're live.
Hi, I'm Brittany Burton. I am with the Sport Clips National Artistic Team, and I'm super excited today. I have my model Chris with me, and he has been growing his hair and beard out since he was at home. And you work from home, right, Chris?
Correct.
So you've been just kind of trying out this new kind of long hairstyle.
Trying it.
Okay, so how long have you been growing it out?
About 2 years.
2 years. Okay, so right now we are going to help Chris out. We're going to give him a little bit of a style. So we're going to keep the length on top because it is pretty long, but I'm going in and with a number 2 right now, I'm just going to take this section down and we're going to do a nice fade and taper it down in the neckline. Now as I do this, I'm just kind of holding the hair above so that I don't cut into it. And then I'm going to go in and do that fade in just a minute. Now, we'll also be doing some beard techniques today, so if you guys like beards, then you can hopefully get some good techniques for that as well. So we're just kind of knocking off that bulk right now. All right. Okay, so now that we've got that number 2 going, I'm going to go down to my 1.5 guard. Now, a lot of people ask me, why do you use a 1.5 when you can use your notches? I just think work smarter, not harder. So with my 1.5, I can just make sure that that's nice and crisp. Nice smooth transition. And if you look down for me, Chris, please. Perfect. And I'm just going in. I like to do this at kind of a zigzag shape. Zigzag motion with my clippers so that I don't leave any harsh lines behind. Now I'm curious, those of you who are watching, if you want to put in the comments, what kind of styles are you seeing now that we're kind of out of quarantine? Are you guys seeing those longer styles, the beards? I feel like we're seeing them a lot more now. And so, you know, in addition to teaching our team members at Sport Clips how to keep up with these trends, we teach our team members how to educate their clients that are starting this grow out process. And so we were just talking about that, and I was asking him what products he's using at home and if he's using anything on his beard, and he said he was using a beard oil. So I'm going to educate him on a few more products as well before we're done today. Now I have my number 1 guard on my clippers, and I have it open just so that I can make sure that that transition is nice and seamless. You can tell this is not taking much time because I'm using these half guards. And I'm just taking that fade just right behind the ear. I'm not taking it in front of the ear yet because I'm going to be transitioning that into the beard. Okay. Going in with my number 1 closed. Perfect. And now I'll be going in with my half guard. And this isn't taking out a whole lot because, you know, we're just transitioning from that 1 to that half. And right now it's a little hot outside, so we're a little sticky. So I'm just trying to move smooth over his neck here. Now you were telling me, Chris, that you were trimming your own neckline. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so we at Sport Clips do offer free neck trims in between visits. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. That's awesome.
Yeah, so you can come in anytime and get your neck and around your ears cleaned up, and that's just something that we do to take care of our clients in between those haircuts.
So we do have a question from Maria on Facebook. She's wondering if you have any type of hair products that you like to use as you do the haircuts.
Yeah, I do. I like to use a cutting aid. So we use our Paul Mitchell Tea Tree Hair and Body Moisturizer at Sport Clips as a cutting aid as far as our scissor cuts. And the reason that we do that is because when we use a cutting aid, we're able to cut through the hair a lot easier. And then if those guys come in with product in their hair, we're able to break down that product a little bit with that Tea Tree Hair and Body Moisturizer. But really any kind of moisturizer would be great for your clients, especially if they are keeping their hair a little bit longer, so you can make those clean sections and clean partings. And I'm just going in now with my trimmers, getting all those loose hairs off. Now the cool thing about this is we're taking this length off the bottom, but he's still going to be able to wear his hair down and it will cover this up. So he kind of has that option. So we're going to go back to that in a minute, but I do want to kind of talk about the beard. So you can look up for me now. Just like that. Perfect. Just moving your head all around. All right. So his beard is very full. And one thing he said is that he wanted to keep the beard full. And sometimes when guys say they want to keep their beard long, that's really what they mean. They just want the fullness still there. Now, if you'll look up for me real quick, the fullness of a beard actually comes from this area right in here. So a lot of people I have seen, they'll take the beard really close to the chin line there. And what happens is that just leaves little hairs kind of following through, and then they don't have that fullness that they're really looking for. So as I trim his beard, I'm going to be very careful that I don't take out that fullness and that he still has that nice full beard that's going to be nice and shaped and sculpted. So the first thing is wide tooth comb. Make sure you comb through that beard. I wouldn't recommend using a small tooth comb for this because you might rip out the hair, or if there are any tangles, it might pull on the client. And I'm sure he wouldn't appreciate that. All right, so now that it's nice and combed out, I'm going to actually start with my trimmers. And one thing that we want to think about with the beard is keeping it as natural as possible. So this line falls below the jawline here. If I chip all of this off right here, then all that's going to grow back and it's going to look super funky in that grow out stage. So as I create these lines coming down here, I am going to clean this up, but I'm going to try to keep that line as clean as possible and as natural as possible to his current growth pattern. So now he'll just have a little bit of that grow out in that area. And all of this is being over directed because I don't want to get rid of that fullness. I'm just going in with my trimmers, tap, tap, tapping, and then bringing my trimmers up to that line. Now here it's the same thing. We want to be aware of where the hair is moving. So I'm taking that bulk out with my trimmers, just pulling my trimmers up. And you can see that that's going to start to shape that up really nicely up to the ear.
So we do have a question from Christian wondering, would you blow dry the beard to smooth it out or just leave it in its natural shape?
So it really depends on the beard. Sometimes I would blow dry it out, especially if he comes in and if it's super curly and it's shrunk up a lot, I might blow dry it out a little bit. But I do know that keeping it a little bit natural can help me make sure that it's going to lay naturally whenever I'm done. And a lot of guys don't blow dry their beards, so I want to keep that in mind as well. Okay, so now that I've kind of got that shape, I'm just going to continue to define that. Make sure that's a nice clean shape there. Again, I'm not going into the interior of the beard. I'm really focusing on the exterior, creating that shape that's going to follow that natural hairline into the jaw. Okay, so now I'll move everything forward. And I'll do the same thing. And the first thing I'm doing is using the edge of my blade just to kind of move up the section, and then I'll come back. And so if you were to do a zero fade here, one thing that you might do is take your trimmers, especially if this is full here, and take your clippers and go down the section. So with the guard that you use, so if I were to use a number 1 guard down to a 0, I would take my number 1 guard and move down the beard like this to transition it from that shorter length into that beard section. One thing you don't want to do is just go in and do this, because then you'll lose all that fullness that's right here around the ear. All right, so again, just cleaning up that section, using the corner of my blade, going here. We want to keep this as natural as possible as well. If you drag your clippers down too much, you'll go into the beard. And again, when that starts to grow out, it's going to grow out with lots of little pieces that will go much lower and will look kind of funny. Okay, if you'll look up for me, please. All right, so remember, we want to be very careful not to take out that fullness. I'm going to keep this as natural as possible. And whenever you do beards, remember it's very coarse hair, so we don't want to drag that trimmer down. We want to tap, tap, tap the line in, and then pull our trimmers up to that line. The coarser hair is a little bit harder to cut, so we just want to be very careful not to pull the clients. There. All right, so keeping it nice and natural.
We have several questions asking if there's certain beard prep you do before trimming.
Yeah, so I mean, the most important thing is with your wide tooth comb, combing it out. Occasionally, I will also use a moisturizer to help me cut, especially if I'm cutting with shears. Because today I'm cutting with clippers, I really just made sure it was nice and combed out. Some people will like to use a wet brush as well, and some clients prefer that as well too. So just making sure that it's nice and combed out and you can see all those stragglers. Okay, I'm going to come up under here. Now, one really cool thing that you could also use if you wanted to on these beards, you can look down for me real quick. I'm going to do this side. Is you could use one of the foil shavers as well to kind of clean up any areas, make it a little bit smoother, if that would be your preference. We are actually giving away one of the foil shavers today on this live, as well as the Gold FX Pro clippers. So if any of you have used those shavers before, they're pretty awesome. They get it super smooth. And the one that we're giving away today, I know it has the cutting parts on the inside. They actually are on separate springs, so they allow you to contour a little bit easier. Okay, so keeping this nice and natural. It's a little bit longer on this side than the other side. He did tell me he was trimming it at home himself. Okay, and go ahead and look up for me again. So some clients, their beard hair will go pretty far down on their neck. So, you might have to go up a little bit more, and leave it a little bit less natural. But I really try to leave that line as close to their natural line as possible. Now, do you trim the bottom at all, Chris?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So we do see some shorter lengths here where I guess he has gone in and trimmed. Okay, just going through, cleaning that up. All right, you can look down for me again. And I do like to use my trimmers kind of to shape and to sculpt the beard as I go. Okay, so now I'm going to take a step back, and I really want to make sure that the lengths on both sides are coming out the same. So it looks like our length is a little bit longer over here. So this side was trimmed up a little bit more prior to. So this is where I'm going to pull out my clippers and start to shape the beard. So one thing that a lot of people do is use a lot of pressure. And honestly, with every kind of haircut, sometimes it's better just to use light pressure. And I'm just taking off stragglers right now because he wants that fullness. I'm not taking off any length. You can barely hear it. It's just taking off those wild pieces. And I'm just moving down the beard using very light pressure. Combing as I go, that'll bring those extra hairs up. And then right down here where that length is a little bit longer, I'm just going to put my clippers into the beard like this. And it's going to cut that length down. Now, if he had a longer beard, that would be how I would trim the bottom as well. I would just go in the beard like this. And you want to make sure that when you do that, they're looking up slightly. So look up slightly for me. I would go in like this motion. If they're looking straight on and I try to cut, what's going to happen is I'm actually going to go into that fullness. Remember, the fullness is right in here. So instead, I want to have him look up slightly, cleaning all that up, using my clippers. Not taking off length, just sculpting and shaping. When you're talking to a client with a very long beard, their beard is usually very important to them. There's one good way to lose a client, it's to mess up their beard. So, whenever you have a guy come in with a long beard, my recommendation is not to say, can I cut your beard today? My recommendation would be to say, can I shape your beard or sculpt your beard? Because now they understand you're not planning on chopping it all off. You just want to give it a nice shape. So I'm just moving through, making all that nice and clean, just using the edge of my blade to do so. And I'm actually looking from the side underneath so that I can see any of those areas. And just moving through like that.
We do have a, we do have a question from Kenya wondering, how do you determine where to stop the beard line?
How to stop the beard blend?
Just like where to stop the beard line.
Where to stop cutting?
Yes.
Okay. So it really depends, obviously, on the consultation you have with the client, right? We want to make sure that we understand the length that they're looking for, the fade that they want. But as far as when to stop cutting, usually right before you think it's time to stop. I think sometimes people keep cutting and cutting and cutting, thinking that they're cutting hair. And we want to be as efficient as possible so that we can make money. But also, we want to make sure that we don't take off too much. So I'm really like, in this particular beard, I'm just taking off stragglers. I'm just shaping. I'm just sculpting. I'm not trying to take off tons of length. If I were taking off length, then it would come down to that consultation that I'm having with the client that will determine when I would stop as far as the length in the beard. Now, too, the other thing that you want to think about is if you're cutting this with shears, which you can definitely do. I've definitely cut a beard with shears before. You want to make sure that you don't wet it down first. If you wet the beard down and then try to cut it, it's just like hair, right? It's curly coarse. So curly coarse hair, when you wet it down, it shrinks up. So if you cut it, you let it dry out, it's going to be much shorter than they originally wanted it to be.
We do have a question wondering what type of clippers you're using.
So I am using the BaBylissPRO FX. So these are the clippers we're giving away, but we're giving them away in the gold edition. I have a fade blade on my clippers, which I would like to kind of talk about because I am a fade blade kind of gal. So I'm just going to go ahead and spin him around real quick and show you guys something. So whenever you are doing a zero fade, the fade blade is going to be a little bit flatter. And if you look down for me, I like to use the head shape, right? So I use more of like a scrubbing motion. So I pull up through the hair like this versus that big rock out motion. And that's because of the type of blade that I have, right? So I just move up and use the head shape because I have that flat blade on my clippers. So I'm just clean this up here. Sure, I fade is missing here. All right, let's take a look at that beard. All right, so now that I'm looking at the beard, I'm just looking at the silhouette, right? Because that's the important part. Yes, interior is important. You want to make sure it's even, but you also have different densities of hair, right? So there's different colors of hair, different densities of hair. So you may have to adjust your cutting technique or length depending on that. And so just looking at it, I want to make sure the silhouette looks right. So I'm going to stand back real quick. Okay. So I'm seeing that the density is a little bit heavier over here. He actually has a little bit of a curl here. So I'm going to go in and just take my guard off. Take my clippers in just a little bit in this area. At this point, we're just sprinkling. We're not taking off tons of hair. All right. So now we can look at that silhouette, make sure that it's nice and clean. Now we're going to go back in and do a little bit more detail work around the ears. But one thing that I want to make sure that my client knows before I'm done with him is about the product. So using a moisturizer in his beard and making sure that he knows how to use it. So it's not just putting it over the top, but it's getting in there to the skin. I know this is a little awkward, but I promise you it's worth it for your beard, okay? So we're going to get into the skin because just like your hair, you have skin behind your beard. You got to take care of it. In the hair, we can use a moisturizer as well. And as I said before, he can let this hair fall. And he will still be able to wear it down with the shorter length underneath. So he has a little bit of versatility here. He can pull it up and have the fade, or he can wear it down and it looks great. All right, so there's a couple of tips and tricks on your beard. If you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat and I will go back later and answer them. Thank you guys so much for having us.